tell us what it means to move in the heavenlies.
Well, that has been an ongoing journey since I I listened to Bruce Allen talk about waiting on the Lord on Sid Roth's television program back, I think, in 2010.
Yes.
And as I began to wait on the Lord in times of worship and in prayer, especially during those two times, worship, prayer, and waiting on the Lord, those three different things, the Lord began to move me without me even asking for it. So it was like, as I would worship the Lord, I would go to my prayer chair at night, and I would sit in my chair and I would worship God, and I would worship sometimes for hours, sometimes all night long. Sometimes I would fall asleep. That's, people that work know that that's part of the journey. Waiting on God, you fall asleep, but then you wake up and you do it again. So no, there is no condemnation in that. That's just part of the journey. But uh, what began to happen was, as I would wait on the Lord or as I would worship, I would be caught up,
Wow.
and I would find myself, the first time that I found myself in the throne of God, I was I was way, way far away. I was far away behind groups of saints and angels, and everyone was worshiping the Lord. And I thought to myself, I'll just stay back here and worship. And then as I closed my eyes, even in this experience, and I lifted my hands, I felt myself moving, and the Lord had brought me to the front of the group. So it was like the Lord was saying, "You are not going to be hidden." You might think that you're going to stay distant from me, but you're not. I'm bringing you to the front. And he did this on two different occasions when he brought me to the throne, where he brought me to the front, and I realized I can't hide from him. I can't get away from him. If I'm going to worship, it's going to be face to face, and that's the way the Lord wants it. And so I began to experience this uh, and being caught into heavenly places. And then as I realized this was happening, then when I would go to prayer and I would begin to pray, and I would remember, say, Lord, remember when you caught me into heaven? If there's anything you want to show me or anything you want to tell me, I'm here and I'm willing to receive it. And then I would be caught up. I wasn't, I would say the biggest protocol, so to speak, for seeing those things happen was a life of prayer and worship before the Lord. It's like the Bible says, draw near to me and I will draw near to you. Well, I was drawing near to the Lord, and he was pulling me the rest of the way. And so I began to experience this the more time that I spent. And so it got to the point where even if I was very tired, and it would be late at night, and I would be walking around through the living room to go upstairs to bed, I would see my prayer chair where I pray for the most part. I would see the chair sitting there, and I would think, I don't know if I can just pass by, because what if tonight is the night of visitation? What if
Oh,
tonight is the night that the Lord's going to catch me up? And so I would I would just say, a bed is going to have to wait. I'm going to go to the chair and I'm going to pray and I'm going to worship, because um, I'll tell you something. Even if you spent 1,000 nights in prayer, and the Lord caught you up one time, that catching away would be enough to fuel your passion to continue to wait on God and to spend time in his presence, because I believe he wants that with us. And so um, also in Translation by Faith, you mentioned that book earlier. That was
yes.
actually Bruce Allen's revelation that he allowed me to help him with, to put that together. And so that um, experience of being translated, is for the most part, was also born out of waiting on the Lord, times of worship and times of prayer. So as I would worship the Lord, sometimes, for the most part, it didn't happen in 5 minutes or 10 minutes. If it was extended times of worship where I had decided I'm going to pass out here at my bedside because I'm just going to worship until I have no strength to worship. During
Wow.
those times, then the Lord would fall upon me and translate me to different places to do things for him or catch me away to heaven. So it was like um, getting the flesh out of the way. It's like
Uh-huh.
once the flesh had no strength to resist, because that's a hard um, opposition. Sometimes the flesh is what gets in the way of us having experiences in God. The flesh wants to argue. The flesh wants to say it's not real. The flesh wants you to go to sleep, all of these different things. But once the flesh gets out of the way, it seems like the things of heaven, the things of the spirit just become so much more apparent. And how real does it get? Let me just touch on this. So a lot of people think, well, you tell stories about God's presence and angels that show up or face to face with the Lord. How real does it get?
Mm-hmm.
How real it gets is like this. Once you have experienced the things of the Spirit, where um, where you're in the spiritual realm and you're interacting with spiritual beings, it exceeds the physical realm. It's far beyond the physical realm. So if you haven't surpassed that, you haven't experienced what I'm talking about. But there's a pathway, so to speak, because many times we do not know how to receive these kinds of visitations, which is why a
Oh,
lot of times angels would show up and say, "Fear not," because it's so over the top we can't even hardly understand it or believe it or experience it the way we should. So very often the Lord will take you on a journey where your first visitation might seem like a dream. The second might seem like a dream. The first 300 visitations might seem like a dream. But then that
oh
dream
my word.
gets real, you know, and then it gets more and more real. And until your own clarity of understanding and your own spirit develops to the point where you realize, okay, I really am here. This is really happening. There is no question in my mind. It's more real than the flesh.
Wow, that's such a beautiful explanation to the heavenly walk. So, in that state, do you get to do things with the Lord, or do you just go and worship?
Well,